I'm Vulture Culture. This is the Fender Chroma Polaris from 1984, and this is a very special analog polysynth. It is the rarest synth I have in the studio, and it's just a treat to have the privilege of getting to play one of these that is still working, as the membrane panel switches tend to want to go, and that can be a major issue for these. So if you're going to buy one, be aware of that. So this synthesizer is a rare bird because it's the only Fender synthesizer ever made. It was designed by ARP, actually. We'll get into a little bit more of that as we keep going. But you can hear immediately just the quality of that filter. Is just incredible. And it's actually interesting. It's got a few, you can use it bitimbrally. It's got a ring mod. It's got a bunch of different features. So I wanted to go through it tonight and actually just go and experience this. So I think I have a blank patch here. All right, so let's just check out real quick. Wow, that lightning is happening. I don't know if you guys could see that on stream, but I can just see barely out this window, and it is chaos out there. So hopefully no internet issues, fingers crossed. So let's check out just the sawtooth first. Really great, deep fundamental. Oscillators sound great. So the Chroma Polaris has the same components in it as the Prophet 600, as well as the drum tracks, I believe, but most importantly, the Oberheim Matrix 12 and Xpander series. So not the Matrix 6, which we have behind me, but the Matrix 12, and those go for like 25 grand or something like that, or at least they list for that. I don't know that they go for it. So there's going to be a comparison there. And also with the later Curtis chip filters, they're kind of known for being colder. Even the Prophet 5 Rev 3, swapped from SSM chips, which we've been checking out on this channel on a few synthesizers like the Korg Monopoly, the Kwai K3, the Korg Poly 6. The two big companies that were making the chips, the analog chips that were used in all of these famous analog synths, were SSM and CEM. And so this is part of the CEM line, and even when they went from Rev 2 to Rev 3 of the Prophet 5, they went from SSM to CEM, people started referring to them as cold. And I would just ask you guys what you think about that, because it's a little hard for me to know if I agree with that, but there is a certain thing to synths like this. Also, the Akai AX60 behind me kind of has this cold analog thing, which was interesting. So we'll go through some of that. So anyways, more playing the synth, less talking. You're hearing a little reverb. That's coming from Inktomi, my plugin that's going to be available to members of this channel for free soon. Press this button here, and we are now onto a pulse wave. We should be onto a pulse wave. There we go. Back to the sawtooth. And we have pulse width control over the pulse wave. What's interesting, I don't know how well you guys can see on stream, but we have this really clever design element with this teal layout that they went with. The original Chroma Polarises were actually orange and red, more like the Rhodes Chroma. We'll get into some of the history as we keep going here. But anyways, you'll notice that here it's small black, or the teal gets thicker towards the top and the bottom, so that lets you know that it's a bipolar control as opposed to something like the cutoff, which is unipolar, or just going, or unipolar. Unipolar sounds better, from 0 to 100 or something like that. So in this case, we can go we can narrow the pulse width positively or negatively, all the way to 0. And that's a thing. I don't think there's a difference in sound. But that's a way that you could, whatever that melody is. So that's a thing. But we also have it on the sawtooth wave, which is fascinating. And Alex Ball did a video on this, and he said something that I cannot understand. The thunder is striking right outside this window, so I would not be surprised if we have some issues going forward. But it looks like the stream's still going, so we'll keep going while we can. Wow, it is terrifying out there. Florida, it's a hellish place. That is something to know. Let me catch up with the chat real quick. Let's see. Toronto's inundated from smoke from forest fires today. Quite bad. Sorry to hear that, Aquatic Borealis. Nobody likes to hear that. Too Many Clamps says the multi-track with sequentials upgrade to the 6 tracks. Definitely want to hear about that. Major storm cell over Florida should be clearing up. Let's hope. Korg Triton more and more. That's awesome. Yes, it's very unique. Lots of fizz. Oh, cool. That's good to know, Machine Storm. We got Dub Station 0 up in the chat. Can we get some scum in the chat for Dub Station? I am absolutely surge protected. Do not like the idea of any of these synths dying. So definitely. And I was just saying, so you've got that Prophet 600, right? So it's actually the same oscillators and filter in the Prophet 600 as the Polaris. And in terms of, if you want to get into the 2 VCO per voice analog vintage synth game, right? There's a lot of parentheses there, or commas there. But there's a lot of really great DCO vintage synths that you can get for not much. You can even get 2 voice DCO synths for not that much. But if you want to get 2, and you can get a single VCO vintage analog synth for not that much, like the Poly 6 for probably like $1,700-$1,800, something like that. But once you start going into 2 VCO, it gets kind of expensive. Chroma Polarises go for about $3K. But you can get a Prophet 600, which has the same components, essentially, for closer to $1,500-$1,600. So that's a really good way. If you like the way the synth sounds but don't want to put all that money down, then that's something to consider. Anyways, you can hear that we have this really interesting... Whoa! I don't know if you guys heard that. That was crazy. That was like right out the window. I'm a little worried about this. I heard something like change over there. Oof. Ugh. Uncle Jerry's World, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Yes. 40 Thief says, I would say the SEM filters could sound more biting or harsh at times. They can be warm too. I wouldn't necessarily say they're cold. Yeah, I'm terrified. We're about to die. This is the last stream. I'm about to have lightning run through my body. So anyways, one really weird way that they set the synth up, I guess what they were trying to do is save some money, so they picked a few places to pull back. And one of them is there's no mixer. So if you want to have 2 waveforms, or if you only want one, you actually have to take the pulse width of the second wave all the way to 0. So right now we've just been listening to this one kind of whoa. Whoa. I hope that power didn't just like fry this thing. Okay, let's turn this on. I don't know what happened. There was a little power surge. Maybe woke this synth up a bit. Okay. Panic. All right, I think we're okay. Everything's okay. Yeah. I think you should unplug all your stuff if you're right in it. That's not Stream Essential. Yes. I'm a little nervous about the storm. Yeah, I always use surge protectors. I'm under the impression that even if that happens, like, we should be okay with a surge protector. A dark warmth, yes, I could go with that. So anyways, by bringing that pulse width back in, right, from 100% back into the middle, we can start to hear how these waveforms interact with each other. This is just on its own. This sounds good, right? With the other oscillator, now 2 saws. And immediately what becomes apparent is the glory of 2 VCOs as opposed to 2 DCOs. So if this was a 2 DCO 80 synth, it would sound good, but the oscillators would be pretty tight in tune unless you detune them, and even then they were going to detune in a very predictable way. I just want you guys to listen to how the beating between the oscillators, especially when you start, playing a more complex chord, right? It doesn't stay perfect. So yeah, I wanted to give you guys that little moment. I try to keep these streams moving right along, but just to really hear the glory of 2 VCOs. I believe it's the only synth I have from the 80s actually that has 2 VCOs per voice, and there is something special about it. Would it be worth spending this much money, $3,000 on this synth? I think this synth sort of borders into that territory of where it's not worth the price because it is a rare synth. It's easier to justify the price on some of the other synths that I have on this channel. If you want to check that out, I've got a video on this channel that just came out. I've got 2 of them actually. One, top 5 vintage synths for beginners, which are going to be the most reasonably priced synths you can get, and then 5 synths that are going up in value. Vintage synths going up in value, worth checking out. So, looks like the stream's still going. So, let's move on to everybody's favorite thing, the filter, and also sort of probably the other reason I wouldn't recommend this synth is the potential Achilles heel. So we'll just start with no resonance. We'll take the all of the knobs to center here because, like I said, they're bipolar. You can tell by the iconography. And we'll play a low E note, something like that. Without resonance, very warm, very beautiful. Let's add about, 25%. Alpha Z, welcome to the stream, says it has a nice growl. It certainly can purr, can't it? So let's go ahead and increase that resonance to about 50%. And this is where we'll start to get that cold analog thing. I love how vowely this filter sounds. It's just got that Curtis filter growl vocal thing. We did the stream on the SQ80 recently, also has that thing. That's probably my favorite filter. As we increase the resonance, it's going to become more and more apparent, that sort of almost ice picky thing that some people, notably, it seems like certain YouTubers, vintage synth YouTubers, really love the warm synths. I think I prefer often the sound of the cold ones. Something that's hard to get across when you're listening to the synth on its own, right? Not even in a mix, but not against anything else. We could check it against something else if you wanted. But it's going to sound, this synth in particular sounds so much more mid-rangey than any other synth that I have. It's almost like there's this giant 1K boost on it. It's sort of like, it sounds almost pre-EQ'd, whereas a bunch of the other analog synths from the 80s and even the 70s, they can get so dark as to almost have no content where you need it. Anyways, just want to point that out there. You get really fat down low. Yo, J Booth, welcome to the stream. How's it going, my friend? Yeah, so we're at that 75% mark. It's still usable. Of course, we'll go all the way up and check it at 100%. But it's a thing. Not everybody's gonna love that sound. So let's go 100%. I'll pull the volume down a bit and see. And those of you guys with good synth ears just heard what I think is the Achilles heel of this synth, which is the stepping of that filter. So at extreme resonances, it becomes obvious. Probably, I mean, I don't think I ever use 100% resonance for anything. But I want to be honest with you guys that one of the downsides of this synth is, I love a nice, smooth analog filter. And at high resonances, that's not what we've got. And unlike certain synths where you can get around that with the LFO, I don't think you can here. So they say sweep on this synth instead of LFO for whatever reason. Dubstation Zero says, when you're talking 2 VCO price points, I think that's where the value of the Take 5 is apparently modern is apparent, modern or vintage. Yeah, the Take 5 is like the hands down best all analog value synth you can get. I agree, Dub. Euro DJ says, I need to sample this resonance and use modulation via sample start. Yes. Love that, Jim. J-Boot says, putting on my Polaris jacket and stepping into the frozen lake. Euro DJ says, similar to the SY85. Jamie says, the stepping of the filter is rough. Aquatic says, Take 5 is awesome. It's very hard to knock that synth. I agree with you. So let's go ahead and do as an experiment. We'll just route the sweep depth here from the LFO and see what we get. All right, increase that all the way. We're gonna get a nice slow sweep to see what we can get. I think I can still hear the stepping of that filter. That like, even though the LFO does a good job of kind of like, because it's easier to control the LFO, it's a perfect, you know, digital sine wave. I think this has digital LFOs. I could be wrong. It could be analog. I think the filters, amps, and envelopes are, I'm sorry, the filter, oscillators, and amps are all, and probably the envelopes. This might be a digital filter. I don't know. But whatever it is, even if it's analog, because it has to control the filter here digitally with those, that, you know, stepping is just really painful. Jim says, rough stepping is typical of a lot of the 80s analog synths. Yes, but not always. So looking around the room, there's a lot of them. So I'm looking at the Korg Monopoly, not an issue at all. Moog Source, not an issue. Polyvox, not an issue. AX60, definitely an issue. All of the Roland stuff, the DW8000, the Korg Poly 6, Quai K3 is an issue, but like a lot of them, Roland SH2, Korg MS-20, all of those, the stepping is not an issue. Where some of those synths have problems is that essentially when you're controlling it, because it was being controlled over MIDI, you only had that 128 steps to control the synth. So you're going to hear it when you move like a controller fader or something to control the Alpha Juno, let's say, you'll hear those steps. But when you're using the LFO or the envelopes, you don't have that problem. You'll hear that all the time. I don't want to get into the Alpha Juno with Euro DJ, though. We have a long-standing feud between us about the nature of the Alpha Juno, so let's not even go there. Let's try to illustrate this instead with the envelope depth. So we'll get to the envelope in a section here. But for now, I'm just going to increase the attack and decay pretty far to see if we can really hear that stepping at all. Are you coming back? Oh, decays forever. I don't know. I don't really think I hear it actually on the envelope, which is funny because I have a, I used this in a song and I made a big strings pad with it, and I feel like I could hear the stepping, but I'm not hearing it now. So it's funny how sometimes your synth ears play tricks on you. Irish Musico, how's it going? It's been a while. How have you been? Welcome back to the stream. So anyways, so we've covered the oscillators. We've mentioned the LFO. We might as well, while we're here, increase the sweep depth here and show off that it actually does have a square wave in it. I don't know if you guys could hear that. It's not perfect. It's having trouble there. So that would indicate that the LFO is analog or the synth is deeply fucked, one or the other. Probably analog, because it's not holding that perfect square wave there, which is great because when you want to do, on its own, maybe not that super useful, but with a little bit of envelope depth and a little bit of the LFO, you start to kind of get a sound that's kind of cool and, I'm doing really good. Thank you for asking. How are you doing? I need to drink some alcohol. It's been way too long. We should have a cheers right now. That's what I'm talking about. It seems like the storm is leaving and the synth is alive. So cheers to making it through another stream. Can't believe we've done it again. Fucking shit, man. Cheers to all y'all out there. I appreciate all you filthy scum for being my friends and hanging out with me every Wednesday night. Belgian beer. Anonymous asks, have you found any particularly unique or unexpected ways to use the Chroma Polaris in your music? It definitely has a sound that's unique all to itself, and I think you guys are already starting to hear that. And so it's just like a go for it sort of synth. It just really stands out great in a mix. I mean, it does sound good. I just would have to shoot it out against, I think, a Prophet 600 before I could really recommend spending approximately twice as much as a Prophet 600 if you want to get into the vintage VCO, 2 VCO per voice game. $3,000 is a lot, right? And this membrane switch is famous for dying. So that's also, I feel nervous recommending it to anybody because I don't know how easy it is to repair that compared to something like a Prophet 600, which our boy Dubstation can tell us about how easy it is. Tiffany, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Max, welcome to the stream. Max says, thank you for showing the synthesizer. I'm surprised it doesn't have a modulation matrix. No, it doesn't. Actually, the modulation is pretty simple. We will go through almost all of it very quickly here. Thinking about selling one of my synths coming up. And what's funny is I mean, this one, the more I dug into it, the more I realized it's pretty dead simple, with the caveat that it is bitimbral. So what that means is that you can use this synthesizer in basically doubled mode, where it cuts the voices down to 3 voices, or actually technically if you use it in like a split mode, it uses dynamic voice allocation just like a Jupiter 6 does, or Jupiter 8. So that's all cool. But yeah, it's not complicated. I mean, the LFO can affect the oscillators, the pulse width modulation, or the filter. I believe that's it. I mean, just think about that. That's about as simple as it gets. That's, that's simpler than the Korg Poly 6 behind me, which has a separate LFO just for pulse width modulation, and can, I love, for instance, amplitude modulation, running the LFO to the amplifier, also known as ring modulation. And that's the shit to me. I think that makes some of the most beautiful sounds. I don't exactly know why. Just ripping that, volume knob back and forth quickly sounds so great, but it does, and there's no way to do it. Although there is ring mod on this synth. We'll get to that, but you're going to have to keep watching. So Shane asks, are the knobs chrome? I don't know, actually, now that you mention it. I never really noticed it. They're definitely some sort of plastic, but they seem to have like a little silver stripe in them. Yeah. Never really thought about it before. So let's see what else is going on. Yeah, it's very rainy right now. Jay Booth asks, does it have a creamy low end or does it mostly live in the mid range? Well, if we take the same sound and we're kind of pretty mid rangey, right? But if we kill the resonance, let's try that again and see what happens. It's still got that mid-range bite though, right? Even here, it's still got that like little characteristic mid-rangey thing to it that I don't have from any other synth. We could bring the filter really low. Bring that sweep depth down a I think if you shot this out with like a Juno 60, right, it's just not going to have that warm character. It just always, even down here with that filter pretty closed off, there's something where it just, I mean, I love it, where it just pulls the sound right up against your face. You never really lose it. For instance, I've mentioned this kind of effect before that I think a lot of people don't talk about. I should do a video on this. It's great to listen to synthesizers in solo like this, where we're just hearing how it sounds. And synths are very inspiring when they have a lot of low end and warmth, because you play a note and it just like makes your bones tingle. You know what I mean? But one thing I've noticed from spending tens of thousands of dollars on vintage synthesizers is that a lot of times they don't sound that good in the mix because they're so dark that it feels like you have to EQ them so hard to get them to actually, you know, kind of sit in the mix right, unless you're using them for bass. One of my favorite synths, the DW8000, is like that, where it's very dark. And if you listen to the demo I did of it in my most recent video, or the one before, it sounds great on its own. Every time I hear that synth, I'm like, God, it sounds so good. But every time I have it in a mix, I'm like, God damn it, I wish I could just, I'm like cranking like 15 dB into the mid-range, and I'm like, I still can't hear it, right? You never have that problem with the Polaris. The Polaris is like, it's there. So, on the other hand, there are certain types of people who do different types of music. My music's usually pretty aggressive, so I need it to have some sort of bite, something like that. There's going to be some distortion on the drums and stuff, so something that's just very dark almost becomes muddy in a mix that I might do. But certain people who do like very retro synthwavy type stuff, it might really be sort of the antidote. One of those, like a Juno 60 or something like that, where it just, you know, Poly 6, really dark. Anyways, kind of went off on a rant there. I'm known to do that. So let's cover a couple of more things here. So let's make sure. Actually, with the cutoff down, it sounds pretty good up here. I'd also like to point out that that LFO appears to be polyphonic. You know, we're getting these, like, instead of it all being like controlled together, you get that different LFO per note, which is actually really cool. It makes it more useful for something like a square wave LFO, because unless you have that rigidly tempo sunk, it can be a problem. But for something like this, when you've got a few different square waves kind of bouncing off of each other, the fact that it doesn't have tempo coherency isn't a problem. It becomes kind of more of a texture. Yes. Slancha, yeah. Let's drink more alcohol, and then we'll talk about the synth some more. So cheers, guys. Max Matson asks, thank you for answering my question. I also wanted to ask, are all the features on it MIDI CC or is this pre-MIDI? It's not pre-MIDI. And I actually bought the manual before the stream. So Max, if you hang out to the end of the stream, remind me and we'll actually go through the manual and see. One of my favorite things about the manual here, I just got to find this real quick. Nope. Is this part right here. I'm going to just see if it's easier to see it on this. Oh, it's going to be easier, I think, on this one. But it says, an introduction to the MIDI. Thought that was hilarious. Yeah, so I bought this actually just for this stream. And here would be my guess, but please remind me and we'll actually go check it at the end of the stream, Max. This synth is known for having good MIDI implementation. So there's a few different things. In fact, this synth does not have aftertouch, but it responds to aftertouch because it's basically ported over an OS from the Rhodes Chroma. And it can, when you use MIDI, you can actually send, I believe, a different channel to each voice, just like you can on like a 6-tracks, which makes this a polyphonic aftertouch synthesizer. And the rumor is you can take an Ensoniq SQ80 like I have behind me and run the MIDI into it and play the SQ80's polyphonic aftertouch through the Chroma Polaris. But I have not verified that, so don't hold me to it. But I believe most of the things in this synth are pretty well done with MIDI, but we'll just get back to that. So, yo, Romex King got hit by an ad. Fuck that. Yes, Damon Albarn uses this too. I think I've heard that. Are those pitch and mod controllers on the lower left? Yes, they are. However, you'll notice they're not doing anything. So they actually have to be assigned over here in this assign controlled section, which is interesting. We're going to get to that. I'm going to get to every single function and thing in the synth except for the sequencer. I don't intend to talk about the sequencer today because the sequencer is a lot, and I don't feel like doing that. I feel that's just too much for the scope. I think you guys want to hear how the synth sounds. Sequencers are their own thing, right? Anyways, real quick, let's turn off, or let's turn off the sweep depth here. So we just have just a nice, 80s synth sound. And what we can do is put these both into pulse and bring the pulse width to 100. And now we have nothing, right? So one thing we could do is increase the resonance all the way. Yeah, you can really hear actually the stepping now. Well, I thought you could. You sort of can hear it at the low end, can't you? Am I fucking crazy? I don't know. You guys have to let me know what you think about it, if this filter steps or not. I can't tell. So now, there we go. No envelope depth. So what we're doing is we're just playing the filter, right? But we can add keyboard tracking and play it like a beautiful fucking... Oh, like I love that so much. Oh my God, it is so gorgeous. I mean, who needs an oscillator when you've got a filter that sounds that amazing? So one feature that to me is just like critical on synthesizers like this is the ability to actually play the filter. I don't really myself use a lot of resonance most of the time, except for stuff like this, because this is just so gorgeous. Oh, it's just, and I just hate spending, I think it was on the Korg MS-20 stream and even the Korg MS-2000, which does the sort of play the filter type thing with noise. I spent so long trying to just get that filter right, because you have to play there's a little dance between the cutoff and the keyboard tracking. And in this case, it just works. Just like that. Perfectly. I mean, that is worth this synth. I don't know if a Prophet 600, how well it works with that, but that might be a reason you want to have this synth as opposed to that. We also have a pink noise generator, so now we can feed that into the filter. Now we have ice lens, right? Ah, I just love that. So, and we could dial the resonance back a little bit. And now we're kind of in this territory. So this is again one of those issues. I'd love to be able to kind of blend that resonance so it doesn't just like, it's not all or nothing at the top there. So we're not resonant, not resonant. There's no value parameter that's kind of like halfway on, halfway off. You're sort of stuck with, I mean, an earnestly just gorgeous sounding filter, especially with the noise in there, I just think is... And of course you could tune that, right? Like we could go someplace else with it. Which right now we don't have an oscillator mixed in, but what we could do is mix in a little bit of an oscillator. I mean, I could just, I'm getting lost here, just enjoying how beautiful that sounds, right? It's fantastic. You know, it's really got a special something there that makes it more than just, you know, a couple of oscillators. Because otherwise, like I said, this synth gets pretty simple, you know, which is a pro and a con, right? There is this thing where sometimes what we want out of a synth is just the immediacy of like one knob per function. This isn't technically one knob per function because we get to the assignable control over here, but basically one knob per function. And it just, you know, we want it to just work and sound beautiful right away. But there are those times, like we just kind of ran into one, right? Where the fact that we don't have that fine control on the resonance, you know, it's like, that's the thing with this. There's like it's a little bit of an Achilles heel synth for me, where it's like half of me wants to say it's the greatest synth of all time. The other half of me is like, I just can't recommend it in good faith. Ryan Ambrose, welcome to the stream. The phone's just vibrating in your hands. How's it going? Let's see here. Little staticky for sure. Vanessa Jesse, welcome to the stream. Sounds almost scary, like there's a creepy doll sitting in the corner, which is my vibe. It's what I'm going for. We could also tune the filter up an octave, right? It's shrieking, so, you know, I'll bring the volume down a bit. Went out a little bit. Very cold, almost chiptunesy there. Very cool tones that you can get. I don't know. I would ask you guys, do you think from a vintage analog synth, I know you can do this with virtual analog and the modern stuff, but from the vintage analog stuff, Dubstation, some of the other synth gurus here, do you think you can get this sound out of the other? Like, do you go, okay, yeah, I know that sound, and I remember I've used a sound like that on this synth or something. I don't know. I'd be curious to know about that. Jamie says, it certainly has its own unique charm and sound. Yes, I think it does too, for better or for worse. So let's turn the noise off, and let's get back to a couple of sawtooth waves, right? We'll turn the resonance down. Kind of back to that, you know, 80s Juno type sound. So we can talk a little bit about the envelope. By the way, you can't mix the noise. So again, just like you can't mix the oscillators, the noise is either on or off. And in this example, it's not going to be nice. So here's without, here's with. It's a lot, right? So, again, a little bit of a heartbreak, right? Or a little bit of like, you guys were so close, you know, couldn't you have made it happen? But anyways, this is a great time to talk about the envelope. So we have two envelopes. The more interesting one is the envelope, not the volume envelope. They both have this fixed and touch membrane up here. So that turns velocity on or off. And I remember seeing a review for this synth from 1984 where someone said, who needs aftertouch when you have velocity this good? And that's a very interesting thing to say. First thing to say is this synthesizer's almost 40 years old. So I don't know that I can truly review the velocity because, you know, it's had 40 years to not be perfect or exactly. So for all I know, the velocity's better or worse than it was back then. But for me, one thing I've noticed is if I have velocity on the envelope and the volume envelope, it is just so dynamic. I'll give you an example of this real quick. As to be almost unplayable. So here, like you don't even hear anything, but right, like we're having trouble, right? But it also can be. You gotta really slap these motherfuckers, though. But what I have noticed is if you have it on only one, say just the volume envelope, you can get a nice expressiveness out of it because, you know, but with both on, it is almost like way too much. And that's one of those things that I wish was an assignable control over here where we could actually go into this and control that and kind of go, okay, I wish the envelope was a little bit snappier or something. So Nikki, I love you too. How are you going? Can I get some scum in the chat for Nikki? So yeah, it's the envelopes are very velocity sensitive to the point of being a little too much in my opinion. Anyways, going back to the filter envelope, what's interesting about this filter envelope is it is a 5-stage envelope as opposed to a 4-stage. So we're all familiar with attack, decay, sustain, release. Real quick recap for anybody who's not super clear on it. Attack is how much time it takes for the synth to go to the top of the filter, in this case to open the filter all the way up because it's a low pass filter, also known as a high cut filter. It's cutting out frequencies. So when it's all the way down, right, that means there's no high end getting through. So the attack is how long it takes for it to go all the way to the top. And so we can just hopefully simulate that real quick. This is, because there's no attack, it's happening immediately where the filter's starting open and then decaying. If I increase the attack, if I increase the attack, if I increase the attack to 100%, Nikki says, oh my God, we have a Lopez valve in the medical field. I do not know what that means, Nikki. So that's attack. Decay is sort of the opposite. It's how much time it takes to go from the top to the bottom. So I've got the decay pretty high right now. And we could get, actually sounds very nice. Very beautiful sound. We could get this very snappy. I love that we actually have a little bit of, you know, to me, I don't know why you need this fast of an attack or decay. This is the type of thing that vintage synth knobs talk about, like the JX3P is not as snappy as the 106. And yes, you can take the decay all the way to nothing. But anyway, so that's a thing. So decay. And I'm curious, I think at the top, you'll notice the filter only closed in the release stage. So what's happening there is a decay of 100% never decays. It's like the sustain is 100%, which is an interesting feature. Nikki says, did you not say Lopez? I'm sorry. I don't think I did, but I wouldn't be surprised at the shit that comes out of my mouth. So I don't exactly know why you need the decay to go on infinitely when you could just have the sustain all the way up. So the sustain's just where it decays to. So in this example, you could have the sustain all the way up. I guess it's because of the sustain decay. So everybody's pretty clear on attack, decay, sustain, release, right? But sustain decay is an interesting thing. The only thing, I don't know, again, this is another one of those conflicted things for me. So what sustain decay can do is it's the time between when the filter falls to the sustain level. Let's say it's at 50%, let's say. And we take a little bit, if I put sustain decay, I kind of like 50% out everything. Why don't we just do that? Well, 50% out basically everything. So the sound's going to start all the way down, open up, decay to the sustain level, and then sustain always decays to sustain decay 0, or it always decays to 0, and the time is the sustain decay. So unlike a typical analog synth where once you hit that sustain stage, it's just going to be on that level. So if it's 50%, that's where it's going to be. And if it's at 0%, it's going to fade all the way out. If it's at 100%, it's going to stay at 100%. On the Chroma Polaris, the sustain is always inevitably going towards 0. And the time it takes is a sustain decay, unless the sustain decay is all the way up at 100%, at which point it also will infinitely sustain. So if you don't want to use it as a 5-stage envelope and you just want to cheat it, just put the sustain decay all the way up at 100%, and now it's just acting like a regular ADSR. But at 50%, we can hear what this sounds like. Well, that's very uninspiring. Let's take the attack and decay longer. So you can hear what's happening is it actually does sustain for a bit there at 50%, but if we increase the sustain decay, you can hear that it will go all the way up, down to the sustain, and then kind of hover there and then fade off. And then continue to fade off. So it's a really cool feature. And then just to prove the point, if I put the sustain decay all the way up, it's just going to go forever. I love you too, Nikki. Okay, and then the volume envelope is interesting because it does not have a sustain. It's just attack, decay, and release. And so the same idea here. The decay stage can act as an infinite sustain. But if I bring that down just a little bit, oh, Vanessa, you're right. I said low pass, not Lopez. Yo, that Lopez filter is spicy, though. That's some Lake Worth Beach shit. So you can hear that it did eventually fade out. So if you want to have infinite sustain, just hold the, put the delay all the way up. And I think something is kind of true like with the release with that too. I think you can take the release all the way up into infinite. Let's see. We can actually take this into being a drone synth, right? Let's just turn that down for a second, that back up, and then play some low notes. get pretty dramatic sounds here, for sure. Wow, that's still going. Yeah, so there's a lot of potential actually in there, even with a volume envelope that doesn't have a sustain stage, because you can turn the decay into a sustain stage. It's actually a very clever trick. And the sustain decay is really cool because it sort of bridges the gap between the 6-stage synths like the D50, the SQ80, even the Alpha Juno, and the typical 4-stage ADSR synths. It gives you a little more complexity. Because I don't think you can invert the envelope, though, there's a certain way in which you can't do those sounds where the release goes up. And that's a little bit, again, of a heartbreak. I love that type of shit. So, again, yeah, the Lopez filter is amazing. I'm very into the Lopez filter. I am never saying the word low pass again. So let's talk about a few of the other things that are going on with this synth. I'm going to turn let's try to get this back to a somewhat usable synth sound. Let's just see where we're at here. I don't know, Jay Booth, do you think that sounds warm? I think that sounds warm, but there is that like character to it. Anyways, so we actually have a couple of more things I haven't discussed yet, which is the first one is we actually have a ring modulator. And I didn't mention the history, but now's a good time. So the company ARP went out of business in 1981, I want to say. And they made the famous ARP 2600, aka the voice of R2-D2. And probably the synth that's most attainable, that's still a legendary synth, would be the ARP Odyssey. So just like the Mini Moog was Robert Moog's attempt to make a synthesizer that would be like a modular synthesizer. Remember in the 70s that synthesizers did not look like this. They were like all modular, where you had to hook up the wires manually. But he realized, hey, a lot of the times people use the same sort of connections, running the oscillator and the filter into the amp and all of that, 2 envelopes to each of those, LFO to one other thing. So why don't we make a synth that can do that? And that's what we did with the Mini Moog. Alan Robert, why am I blanking on his name? ARP basically was like, okay, great, and did his version of that. But there was a couple of features he put in that synth that made it different. One thing was sample and hold, which is tragically missing from this synth. It does exist in other synths, though, from the 80s. So if that's something you really love, I'm sorry it's not here. But one of the things that is here that is on the ARP Odyssey, and I actually had an ARP Odyssey in the studio for one day, and I can confirm 2 things. One is, even though the Chroma Polaris is made from different parts than you would have seen in an ARP Odyssey, it does have that sound, because an Odyssey has more of a tinny, metallic, I forgot who said it, but it was like the first punk rock synth sound, right? And this has that. It has that timbre to it, or at least it reminds you of an ARP Odyssey, the Polyphonic ARP Odyssey, the title of this video. But what it also had was a ring modulator. So let's talk about that for a second. All you have to do is hit this button on. Real quick, let's go back and just make sure that we have 2 sawtooths so we can hear what that sounds like. Jamie says, when you're drinking mezcal, you're using the Lopez filter. I love that. This is great. So we've got a nice sawtooth pad real quick. And if we hit the ring modulator on, now we're going to hear the difference between the 2 signals, which won't be too dramatic at first. Without the ring mod, with the ring mod, you start to get this like sort of tinny without that. with the ring mod. Right, so that in combination with the already maybe mid-rangey cold filter, you can see how you start getting in there. But what we can do is, say, transpose Oscillator 2. So all we have to do is hit the transpose button and then just hit a key, and that will automatically transpose that. So if we put it up a 7th, let's say, all you have to do is do that. Now Oscillator 2 is a 7th up. Now we've got something. I might have gone down with that. Now we're taking it into almost like FM synth territory. So this is super cool and not a feature you see on a lot of synthesizers. Right? Let's transpose it up a 7th. See? Sounds almost the same. Let me put it back to 1. Up a 7th. Pretty close. Up an octave. We're starting to get, like, because the oscillators are VCOs and they're not in perfect tune, you're starting to get this natural warble. But it's in tune, so, you know, you can use this to create some really awesome bell tones. Starting to get to that atonal place. Let's take it further and start getting into 9 Inch Nails territory. Let's transpose the lowest oscillator all the way down. I mean, we are really into a different timbre than you would expect to get out of an analog synth, I think. Yes. Yeah. Them ads be paying. Oh my God, we've been getting a lot of ads tonight. Well, I got to see if we can change that or something. I know there's some features in YouTube about ads for live streams, and I don't want to make this like a bad viewing experience for people. So let me know. If the ads are a little much, I will try to see if I can change them. I believe I currently have them on the lowest setting that they can be. Like, bizarrely, YouTube is like, the only options are for more ads and not less. But if it's truly annoying, I'll just disable them altogether. It's more important, I think, for Scum Night, this live community that we have to have a good time. And, you know, I'll worry about monetizing other stuff. That's crazy, right? But what we can do is bring the filter down and use that analog filter to warm it up. Hopefully the filter is warm enough for us to actually get there. Wow, it's hard to get that pretty. Kind of like one of my ex-girlfriends. Just hard to make that happen. Let's try to transpose this down a little further. So there, the filter's starting to sort of warm it up. If we take it all the way up, we're starting to get OP6 SE sort of sounds. But if we bring that envelope depth down a little bit, I do have keyboard tracking up. That way I can open the filter up towards the top. But maybe that was bad. Maybe we don't need keyboard tracking. I think I like it without the keyboard tracking so it doesn't get as shrill at the top end. Let's try transposing to a 4th and see what happens. You know, really start to fuck shit up. Wow. Try transposing to this 4th. Now we're really in, like, you know, church bell territory. Merva, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Alpha Juno vibes with that transpose ring modulated oscillators. Yeah, so the Alpha Juno definitely can get into that like metallic bell tone territory as well. Yeah, so Aquatic Borealis repping that YouTube Premium. So, I have a Google phone, so they actually give you a year of YouTube Premium for free, but I'm definitely going to keep paying for it after because it's great. But another thing is like you get YouTube Music, and I'm kind of like at this point where I'm like, I pay $10 a month for Spotify. Why don't I just pay for YouTube Music? I think a couple of years ago I wouldn't have said that because I felt like Spotify was like, as a musician, you want to be like on the platforms that are being used. But I think nowadays I'm like, dude, YouTube Music's good. I listen to a lot of music on YouTube anyways. But you guys let me know. I'll disable the ads if it's too bad. That's on you. You guys just let me know, okay? I'm just trying to fucking have a good time here. Yeah, that's pretty dark. Anyways, that's probably enough into the ring mod. Almost enough. Why don't we pick a really bad interval, like, and just see how bad this can sound. Oh, that's so funny that a fourth sounds worse than that. That's so bizarre to me. Yeah, it actually can sound pretty good. It's not always terrible. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Anyways, let's turn the ring mod off. Let's get back to basics. Back to analog beauty, right? Right? Very nice. We also have oscillator sync. So oscillator sync, what it does is every time you hit a note, it's going to grab that second oscillator and force it to be in tune with the first note, even if it's out of tune, right? And that's kind of this counterintuitive thing. It's harder to understand if just listen to what I just said. That can be a little confusing. But when you hear it, you go, okay, I know that sound. It sort of adds like a wah-wah tone to the sound. So here's the sound without it. With the sync on. Not that much of a difference. With it off. The biggest thing you notice is that the oscillators are more in tune and sound a little bit louder. So we heard the same thing on the Korg monopoly, right? That when you put the sync on, because the oscillators are all hitting exactly in phase with each other, they kind of are perceived to be louder. Let's see. Jim Abbey prefers Amazon Music. I use Amazon Music for the Daily Stoic podcast. Dubstation Zero says, is it going to give us a bunch of my pill and rehab center ads because you're streaming from Florida? Yes, it is. And I'm sorry about that. But they're just like, man, if they're like watching this Floridian hopped up playing 80 cents, they've just got to be on their way to Delray Beach, you know? Good old rehab capital, I can't even talk, capital of the country. Disappointing. Anyways, what we need to do to get this to be different is to either transpose it or to use an envelope to modulate the pitch. So let's start by transposing it. So this is with sync off. You can hear there's an octave up in there. Sync off. Sync on. Let's transpose to like a really high note, right? Sync on. So this is a way that we can also get some of those more bell-like tones, but do it where, you know, you almost kind of get like an E piano tone out of this, right? If we added some to it. Almost like a really butchered Rhodes type sound. Here, the keyboard tracking would help. Very beautiful. You know, to me, that's actually kind of nice. I'm discovering on this live stream a bunch of really cool sounds you can get out of the synth that I wouldn't have normally have thought to sync an oscillator up that high, but it's actually kind of nice for this sound. We can tighten up the envelope a little bit. Really get that. Yeah, like that. So we want to get it. That's actually a very convincing sort of analog Rhodes piano type sound. You know, it's not a DX7 E piano sound, but it's not bad. We put these into pulse waves, right? And maybe take that even a little further. Something like that. Yeah. Jim says, at least it's not as bad as California. Heard. Vanessa says, we're in the UP of Michigan. UP. I don't know. Upper Province of Michigan? Anyways, enough of this e-piano nonsense. Nobody cares. Let's actually modulate the what I want to do now is use the envelope to modulate the pitch of Oscillator 2. So we're finally coming over to the assignable controls, which unfortunately I don't know how well you can see over there. But a way to cut costs on the Polaris was to give you one knob per function over most of the synth, and then some of the stuff you don't use as often, they put it over here. So Oscillator 2 envelope, we can add some to that. I'm going to turn sync off so you can hear what it's doing first. So all the way down. Oh, so this is interesting too. This assignable control can be unipolar or bipolar, like my ex-girlfriend. And when it's bipolar, that means that in the middle, that's where it's neutral. And these all have really good dead zones in the middle so that you don't like kind of get slightly off tune or something. So this is it doing nothing, right? Let me add a little bit more volume in here. Yeah. So in the middle, it's not doing anything, but as we add to this number, we'll start to get some pitch. I just want to get a nice falling pitch. Nice little... Upper Peninsula. Boom. There we go. The knowledge is in my brain now about what UP Michigan means. You can check out anytime you like, but you could never leave. So, on its own, this doesn't sound all that great, right? It's kind of interesting, but not wonderful. But as soon as we turn sync on, remember what hard sync does, or sync between oscillators, is it forces oscillator 2 to be in tune with oscillator 1. But what will happen to that waveform when it's triggering so many more times, but it's not in tune with oscillator 1, is it changes the timbre. So this is how you get the classic sync sound. So real quick, without the sync sound, we've got with sync on, maybe a little less. We've got that kind of Daft Punk type sound. Sounds great on bass. Nice saggy. Yeah, so that's how you get that sound. And of course we could, slow that down. Maybe bring that down a little bit more. Well, it's funny how quickly it kind of... Very stabbing westward, yes. For sure. Yes. Hey, Jim, have a great night. Thanks for hanging out. Can we get some scum in the chat for Jim? Appreciate you, brother. Once again, we're sort of in this territory where it's like, yeah, it's getting cold. It's getting cold in here with these sounds. I love how this synth sounds, but I understand why some people are like, it's just cold. The combination of the sync, the ring mod, and the stabby, ice-picky nature of the filter. Can you have both of these on at once? Wow. I didn't realize you could have the ring mod and oscillator sync on. So without it, with both on. Okay, let's do this fair. With nothing on, aka just the sound of your typical analog signal path. With sync on, forces it to be in tune. With ring mod on, that's sick. Wow. It's like a really gnarly retro video game tone because it's just so gritty. So, yes, and Jay Booth points out that, yeah, those sync lead sounds were all over the 70s and 80s. The Prophet 5 was used by the Cars to do that famous song, and ever since then, hard sync has just been associated with that sort of synth lead sound. It's all over the place and very cool. But I will say, what was it? Hey, have a good night, Jamie, okay? Great to see you guys. Very nice to meet you. What was it? Vin Anonymous? Something like that. And Sheep Andy, you guys have a great night, okay? A little bit of a downer is... That's very cool. kind of the assignable control. Again, like you don't have a lot of bit depth there. So you're sort of, you fall to one parameter value or another. And sometimes you want to be in between those. So same thing as like with the filter resonance, you sort of end up with a few, you know, kind of random things. So anyways, real quick, we can cover a couple of other things that are going on. We'll turn this off and we'll turn this back into a synth. Kind of a regular synthesizer sound. Yeah, nice. So we have a couple of features over here in assignable control. The number one that I would have liked to have had was detune. So right now, this is how the synth sounds. Really nice and fat. But we can actually make it sound fatter by detuning the oscillators. And unfortunately, that's over here on assignable control. I would have loved to have had like just one more fader. Please, you know, synthesizer Jesus, take me back in time and let me tell Paul DeRocco, who actually designed this synthesizer. He used to work for ARP. I think I got lost on the history. So ARP got acquired by CBS Instruments, which also owned Fender. So that's how Fender ended up making a synthesizer, is that it was kind of all slammed together. But Paul DeRocco, who used to work for ARP, designed the synthesizer. The one thing I would have liked is to have that detune knob over here on the oscillators, just because that's kind of the nature of it. But without that detune, if we bring it down to the center here, you know, we've got a cool synth. Sounds good, but let's, you know, thicken it up a little bit. Pretty detuned, which can sound, you know, for me, the way this synth detunes is interesting. I had my hands on a Jupiter 6 and was thinking about buying it. Decent price, not great, not bad. And one of the things is that it actually has the same oscillators, I believe. Actually, I'm wrong. It has 3340 oscillators, I think, which are the same as like the Oberheim OBXA in the Jupiter 6, but it has the Jupiter filter, which is great because it, you know, it's a Jupiter filter. Although it too kind of gets that cold thing because the way they wired it up was weird or whatever. So that's another story for another day. But the one thing I can say about that was like clearly the winner, and I don't understand why this would be. This fits almost into the category of like synth magic I don't like to talk about because I'm kind of more of like a practical science-based person when it comes to talking about synths. But the detune on the Jupiter 6 was really good. Like when you turn one of those knobs, you go, okay, I get it. The detune on this synth is good-ish, but once you take it too far, you know, I don't know. It's not for me. You know, maybe for an industrial lead like... You know, that's kind of cool, but for playing chords, it's just too detuned, right? Not quite. There's actually a trick up the sleeve of the Polaris, and I don't hear people talk about this, so I'm really happy to be putting this out. It's a shame it's an hour and 45 minutes into the stream because I would have preferred to have maybe highlighted something that is unique about this synth. Because this control is bipolar, that means that when we're going up, we get traditional detune, which detunes oscillator 2 from 1 the exact same amount across the key bed. Going down, we get detune that is scaled up the keyboard. So here's a no detune. You'll notice it's not no detune because it is voltage controlled oscillator, so they're already sort of drifting. They're already sort of have a little bit of their own sound, right? I want you to pay attention to the rate of the difference, sum and difference between the waves down here at the bottom. I'm tuning the filter so you can really hear it. Hopefully you have good enough speakers so you can hear these low frequencies, but you'll hear that it's got this wum, 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 wum type sound. Right? As we go up the keyboard now, we're getting that exact same beating. So that's different than a typical analog synth. Typical analog synth, when this is positive, you get a sound where that beating is twice as fast as you go up each octave. So down low. Then if we go up an octave, you'll hear that the beating between the oscillators is twice as fast. It'll be pretty chaotic. And then twice as fast again. Pretty shrieky, right? But as we use negative detune, we can get pretty gnarly in the low end, but as we play higher, it's the exact same detune. See, it doesn't get like murky. Unlike if I go positive, it's really gnarly. But up here, wait, it's too much. It scales the detune. That is a awesome feature. I wish every synthesizer had that, and I'm not aware of any synths that I have that can do that. Yeah, it's really cool. It kind of helps keep the detune equal across the entire key bed. Well, not really. It's interesting. I wonder if it would sound better up here. I don't know. To me, with the typical detune, it's a little sharp sounding towards the top. We go in the other way. You have to use a little less detune when you're going negatively. So I think the way that works is that it's less detuned the higher up you go, and it's more detuned at the bottom, right? Because this is pretty detuned, but up here, it's almost not detuned at all. So that detune scaling is just awesome. So we've covered already a bunch of these cool features we have here. I've been using the volume all night just to help balance out the sound of the filter. We can also assign that to an expression pedal. So we've got volume pedal. We can assign the cutoff to a pedal. So you can use an expression pedal. I've got one down here to actually do that, which is kind of cool. Pitch pedal, so you can control the pitch with a pedal. Vibrato, so that's the amount of vibrato that is sent to the oscillators. The rate of the sweep. We've got glide amount. So let me check this out real quick. I think we need to be in unison mode, which I seem to have forgotten how to do. I know we have it, but let me see if that button does it. Does this? No, it doesn't. So just don't worry about that. So we could change the glide amount, right? But we also have mod lever range and bend lever range. And so this is where it gets interesting. We have oscillator vibrato, which can be positive or negative, and that can be different amounts for both, which is super cool. So you could have oscillator 1 go positive and oscillator 2 go negative by a different value. You know, it's a thing. For me, I don't know. I would have been fine with just regular vibrato. And there's a vibrato delay, so that's over here. So that's all of the controls in the assignable control, right? But the bend lever range is where things get super interesting. So if I increase this, right? It defaults to an octave, which I appreciate so much. Again, like the filter envelope, the keyboard tracking here, the fact that it just works instead of having to play fucking games like you do with a lot of these vintage analogs. Very smooth, too. Right? Super cool. But what actually makes this interesting is I have a sustain pedal here. I'm going to put it in. I didn't have it in this whole stream because it was actually causing some hum. It's an old vintage sustain pedal from the 90s. But what we can do is if I have a note here. Let me see. Did I stick it in the wrong hole? Nothing worse than sticking it in the wrong hole. Let's see. When you're not expecting it, at least. Whoa. Oh, that must have been the trigger. Where are we going here? Come on. Sorry, guys. One thing I love about the synth, too, this is something that, like, you don't even have on modern synths. If I shut the synth off right now, it has saved my patch to the workspace patch that's different than just, like, every other patch that we have in here. If you want to hear the patches in this synth, I actually covered it on the 100th episode of Scum Night. I just go search like 100th episode of Scum Night or something like that. That's where you can just hear how the synth sounds, like the presets and everything. I might do another video on it because that video kind of got hijacked by me just talking about how awesome Scum Night is and sort of the journey of how I got here, and then only really covered the synth in the last half. But what I can do is just shut the synth off. When I turn it back on, we haven't lost our progress. We can just... We're right back. And I know that seems stupid, but it's crazy how many modern synths don't do that. Like the Korg Prologue didn't do that. So let me see if I can get the sustain pedal working. Which hole? I thought it was supposed to go in there. Okay, that's it. Always do this stupid. Okay. Get it in there. Wait, fuck. What the fuck? It sucks. This is one of the issues with having these stands. This is a beautiful thing to be doing live on the internet, I suppose. Fucking no. Well, we might have to demo this another night. Whoa. Whoa. Let's try over here. I'm just feeling around. Fuck it. It's the end of the stream. One of these fucking... Okay. We'll fuck around with it another day. The point I was trying to get to is a really unique feature of the Polaris. Go check Alex Ball's video if you need to see it. Is that you can actually do pedal steel or steel guitar type sounds where you have one note ring out, and then as you adjust the pitch bend, if you like sustain those notes, it only is the notes you hold down that get affected by the synth. Fucking, this is gonna drive me crazy. Let me fucking... Guys, put up with me for a second here. I gotta fucking do this. I'm grabbing a stool. I'm drinking alcohol. That always helps when I'm just delirious and confused. Let's find this fucking bullshit. Is it? Yeah, that's the expression pedal, I think. I'm just talking to myself. It's got to be one of these. I think it's this one. Wait. Let's fucking find the fucking goddamn pedal. Oh, I moved the pedal. Gosh darn it. I was really hoping to demo this. This is great. This is quality content right here. What am I fucking looking at? Foot switch. Okay, if it's not this one. Okay, that's gotta be it, right? So. That's it. But, did it work now? It's okay. So here's the issue. For whatever reason, it's working in reverse. Oh my God, can't find the hole. It's always a problem, Vanessa. I appreciate you guys encouraging me. Not gonna knock it over. Mark, by the way, welcome to the stream. We've got it going. For whatever reason, the sustain pedals in reverse wasn't doing that earlier. But what we're gonna do, I have to show this to you guys. It's too cool to not show it. Thank you for putting up with me. So, right now I have to keep my foot on the sustain pedal to get it to not force the notes to ring out, but that's okay. So, in this case, pitch is doing nothing, right? So we need to go into the bend lever range and assign some pitch value. Right? So now we've got that. And then if I take my foot off the pedal, we just got, yes. 40 Thief says, sometimes it's depressed when you plug it in, it goes in reverse. Yes, and the polarity on the pedal. So like, I've got a Moog expression pedal that you can mess with the polarity. So let me see if I can, I can try to fix it now that we've got it kind of close. Let me try stepping on it then. I can't get it to not do the opposite of what I want, but that's fine. I don't fucking care at this point. All I want to show you guys is how cool this feature is. So if I play this chord, but let me just hold this G note here. Or let's go this note. I don't know. Fucking nice chord. There we go. So let's use the bass note. Let's use the bass note here. And we're going to keep that bass note, but we're going to bring everything else up. So I'm going to, or vice versa. Yeah, so I'm going to play everything, take my foot off the pedal. And of course, now it's not doing it. What am I doing wrong here? Okay, I swear to God, before this stream, I was able to figure this out, but... throw up. So what I think it is that because I have the polarity of this pedal, do I have a fucking polarity switch on this? I don't think I do. Yeah. Okay. I'm over it. For whatever reason, because there is no God, and doing these streams live always comes with some sort of curveball that I wasn't prepared for. But I hope you guys get the idea, at least anyways. Like I said, go check Alex Ball's video out on the Chroma Polaris. Essentially what you could do is you can play some notes and have some notes pitch bend up or down, but leave the other notes where they are. It sounds super cool. It's a nice little feature that I haven't really seen on any other synth, but I can't demo it for you today because it's scum night and nothing ever goes 100% perfect on this channel. And I'm hoping that's part of the fun, because if not, then wow. So yes, we will just turn the synth off again and on again. We'll try that. Wait. Mark. Can we get some fucking cheers in the chat for Mark? Mark is a fucking genius. I didn't think about the classic turn it off again, turn it on again. So let's see if it works now. It's not working. So I'm doing something wrong. Let's see. What am I doing wrong here? Maybe it's the pitch pedal? I don't know. Mark is the man, only for me to still be missing some critical function here that's making this work. I don't fucking know. I thought I had this figured out, but I mean, here's the thing. Do I have to assign the mod wheel to invert? I don't think so, but we could go ahead and do that, right? Wait a second. In this example, it's using like a really slow pitch bend. Yeah, I think that's just modulating the pitch bend there. Oh, God, I love being trash on the internet live in front of people who know more about synths than I do. Oh, God. Yeah. 40 Thief says, I have like 3 sustain pedals because some synths need a specific one. Yes, that's true. So I'm using the sustain pedal from the SY99, probably just giving me some issues here. So anyways, that's the fucking Polaris. Oh, gosh darn it. Wow, that is something. That is a way to exit a stream if I have ever fucking done it before. I mean, honestly, a lot of fun to just kind of trash out right there at the end. But truthfully, hopefully, fingers crossed, I've kind of put something out there that's a little bit more in depth than the rest of the videos. Alex Bald's video is incredible on the Polaris, but hopefully I kind of demonstrated some of the deeper stuff in there too. Some of the features, like I think the detune feature is really incredible. It's a really cool synth. Now I have to say, because it is going for, I think you can get one for about $2,400 right now, but they tend to go for about $3K. Well, actually, I'm remiss. I should have said this. Guitar Center right now has one for $1,750. Now, the thing about Guitar Center is it's not super good at checking the membrane switch quality and stuff, so it might have dead switches. But the great thing about Guitar Center is they've got a 3-day return policy. So if you get that synth shipped to your store, don't ship it to your house. Ship it to the store so it doesn't get destroyed in the mail. $1,750 is an awesome price for a Polaris. And there's one up on the Guitar Center website right now. Getting that would be worthwhile. If, in general, though, the $3,000 price mark that they hang around, I think there might be better synths for value at that price point. But what I can say about it is that it sounded incredible. I mean, I really had fun this stream just listening to how that synth sounds, because it sounds so different than everything else that I have. And I've got a lot of synths, right? So for me, that's why it's probably going to be a forever synth, something I don't sell. But I could understand why, or rather I'd like to say that I think for a lot of people it might not be the best way to spend money when it comes to vintage synths, because you're probably better with a Prophet 600 if you just want the 2 VCOs per voice analog synth. You get those closer to like that $1,500-$1,600 mark for sure. Lopez forever. Hell yeah, Vanessa, I agree. We're going to be Lopez synthing from now on. It's Lake Worth Beach. Let's get it done. So anyways, yes. Anyways, guys, I just want to say thank you once again for being amazing. Let's do a quick shout out here. Let me pull up my panel here. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of the members of this channel. Let's see if I can actually do this. I'm shook. I'm tilted by the chaos of the stream. But real quick, let's give a shout out to my boy J Booth for joining the channel. I appreciate you. Daniel Lewis, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Jim Abbey, as always, that's my man right there. Douglas Edge, Autumn, Tony Argo, Vulture Mom, Aquatic Borealis, Dub Station Motherfucking Zero, Nikki, Andrew Fields, and Anna. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel directly. I really appreciate it. Your guys' direct support makes a big difference in me being able to do this channel every week. And also, you get Diodes and Rust for free. I am working on a lot of new stuff that's going to be available to members for free as well. So unfortunately, like Inktomi, you were listening to the plugin all night. It was the reverb and the chorus that was on the Polaris. That's going to be free for members, but it's not out quite yet. I'm doing some testing on it. Want to make sure it's really good before I get it to you guys. But anyways, it's a great way to help the channel. I appreciate you guys. Hey, Ed from Earth, what's up, man? How's it going? Stream's out. I'm done for the night. I appreciate that. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Stay safe. Love and light, bitches. And I am out. Have a great week.